Today, I'm going to continue teaching from the book Everyday Consciousness and Primordial Awareness by Trangu Rinpoche. I'm going to continue talking about the seventh consciousness, or the Klesha consciousness. This consciousness is considered a consciousness that is stable. The first six consciousnesses that were discussed are unstable. They appear and then they're gone. And that is what unstable means, whereas the Klesha consciousness is ever present. It carries with it this idea of I, me, this is me, grasping on a self, and so forth. The afflictions of attachment, anger, and dullness are made of negative thoughts, while grasping at a self is a neutral place. Very quickly, it does go into these negative thoughts and negative emotions. The reason why it's neutral is that you also can do positive and virtuous activity with the idea of a separate individual self. So that is why it's described as being neutral. It can be either virtuous or non-virtuous, the actions that are generated with this idea of a separate self. Trangu Rinpoche differentiates two kinds of neutrality that are based on the obscuration of our primordial awareness, our Buddha nature. The first is obscuring and neutral. It obscures our Buddha nature, it obscures our primordial awareness, and it hinders our liberation as a result of that. The other is non-obscuring and neutral. This is basically any kind of actions that do not hinder liberation. And he gave the example of wanting to go for a walk. You still have this idea of, I'm going for a walk, but it's a relatively neutral, non-obscuring activity. So the first is a problem for attaining the primordial awareness, which is really what this whole book is all about, transforming ordinary consciousness into primordial awareness. We need to work with that. And if we have this obscuring neutral Klesha mind, then this comes a big obstacle to traveling the path. We have to abandon that if the goal is to be attained. He then talks about for bodhisattvas what this means in terms of abandoning this Klesha mind. For bodhisattvas, when you experience the first bodhisattva level, which is synonymous with the path of seeing, when you look at it from the five paths, this is the direct experience of emptiness when you're meditating. And this is this moment of seeing the truth of the ultimate, of the dharmata. At that moment, Klesha mind is not present because the person is experiencing the non-existence of a self. The Klesha mind just stops functioning briefly. It's not a permanent stopping of the functioning of Klesha mind. It's just that it pauses. To use a modern analogy, you've pushed the pause button. When you finish with your meditation, then it starts functioning again. As you travel the 10 bhumis, when you attain the 8th bhumi, at that point, it is completely transformed. So that's explaining a little bit about the Klesha consciousness from the Mahayana level. He talks about it from the Arhat level, which is the Hinayana level. And this means that the Klesha mind is abandoned when Arhatship is attained. This is both during meditation and in post-meditation. So it's important to understand this way the Klesha mind operates. It's neutral, and because of that, in spite of grasping at a self, it's possible to accumulate merit. The technical term is defiled virtue. What that means is that the virtue was performed with this idea of a self doing the action, you might say, receiving the benefit of the action, and an action or an exchange occurring between self and other. This is a relative view, but by accumulating defiled virtue as we travel the path, it does transform into wisdom. Another way to look at this is there are the 6 transcendent virtues, and the first 5 are working with accumulating defiled virtue. And as we accumulate enough of that through the first 5 transcendent virtues, it transforms into wisdom and becomes undefiled wisdom. So from the ultimate point of view, grasping at a self is the root of all mental afflictions, and they are all bound together. That sums up what he talked about in terms of the Klesha consciousness. The next topic is the all-bace consciousness, which is the 8th consciousness. We've talked about the 5 sense consciousnesses earlier, the mind consciousness, and these are all unstable. They come and they go. The 7th, just finished talking about that, is stable, and now the 8th consciousness is also stable. It's also important to remember that they are collections of consciousness. It is not 1 8th consciousness, 1 7th consciousness, 1 6th consciousness, and so forth, that they are all a collection of various consciousnesses. The 8th consciousness is called the all-bace consciousness, and it is the basis, the foundation of the whole mind. I don't know how accurate this is, but I kind of think of it as being a bit like a hard drive. It's a hard drive where you don't have to save anything because it's automatically saved. Everything gets stored there. Sometimes it's called the storehouse consciousness. This is where we store our karma, our habitual patterns, and so forth. Well, here was a point that I skipped over, that from the absolute point of view, that there is only one mind. Quoting Trungpa Rinpoche, the mind is one, the essence is one, and its expression is clear and cognizing. The reason why we talk about a collection of consciousnesses is that it's cognizing all kinds of phenomena. It's having all kinds of thoughts. The I consciousness can look at a flower and see color, can see form, see stem, a leaf, and all kinds of other things. Maybe see a bee on the flower. The point being that each one of these is a separate moment of consciousness. So the mind consciousness keeps all of these other consciousnesses together. The all-bace consciousness expresses itself in 2 different ways. One is, quote, all-bace that seizes karmic imprints. So this holds our memories and our habits, input from our first 6 consciousnesses. These first 6 consciousnesses are unstable, and they cannot keep what they experience. They're gone. They have no memory. They dissolve as soon as they arise. But the 8th consciousness holds these, and needless to say, has no problem bringing them back up. You all have experienced sitting on the cushion, and then all kinds of thoughts arise, and you think, where did all of these thoughts come from? I haven't thought about that for years, and so forth. The second aspect of the all-bace consciousness is called, quote, all-bace of complete ripening, end quote. So this is the recollection of habits appearing. It's not storing them, but now it's bringing them back up. This involves how we perceive things, how we respond to what the information our sense organs give us, the thoughts that we have in our mind consciousness, and on and on and on. It is all about responding. And of course, we respond on the basis of habitual patterns and karmic tendencies. Sometimes we have a difficult time understanding what Trungpa Rinpoche was talking about in terms of we're not really experiencing external forms with our sense organs, that it's really internal. It's our mind that has experienced these things. But he explains this by saying that the 5 sense consciousnesses perceive a mental form, that the mind itself appears in that form. If we ask ourselves how the objects appear, quote, we can say that it is the all-base consciousness itself that appears in the form of these objects, which are then perceived through the perspective of the sense consciousnesses. Again, he says this is difficult for us to understand, that we've been assuming the existence of external objects and an internal mind for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. But this is why the Tibetans use the dream example to counter this fixation. The objects in a dream appear real. We react to them as if they were real. And when we wake up, we realize that it was just a dream and there was nothing real about it. This is why there is an instruction about when in post-meditation be a child of illusion. That's in the 7 points of mind training. We assume that these objects of ordinary life are there. We generally don't question them. However, they are not truly, and I'm emphasizing the word truly, present externally. They appear on the basis of the inner mind in the same way as dream appearances appear. So it's the karmic imprints that are stored in the all-base that reawaken, emerge, and appear to us. And then he compares the all-base consciousness to a savings bank. In a bank that you have a savings account, you are continually putting money in, and then it continually goes out. This sounds more like my checking account, actually, than a savings account. That might be just a translator's error. So I'm going to say my checking account. Money goes in, money goes out. And this is the way karmic imprints work. They go in and absorbed by the all-base consciousness. They're stored there. And then at the proper time, they come out. I like this example about how we perceive things. So I have a little singing bowl here. It makes a nice sound. I had a bigger bowl that I got from my parents. They had put a little potted plant in it. They didn't think it was a singing bowl. They thought it was something you'd put a potted plant in. It's the same bowl. And if I would put water in it and there was a dog present, the dog would think it was a drinking bowl. And if I took this to a scrap metal dealer, he would assess the composition of the metal, weigh it, say it was worth so many dollars, and on and on and on and on. What it is depends on the perceiver. It might look like, well, it could only be a singing bowl. It was made by the maker as a singing bowl, but that doesn't mean it's a singing bowl. It's whatever you want to perceive it as, and that's based on your habitual patterns. So that's a little bit about how our all-base consciousness works. Now, he talks about learning too, by the way, which I find this kind of interesting, that our mind consciousness processes information. It goes to the 8 consciousness, saved there. Later on, it's brought up. The mind consciousness being unstable, it can't hold on to this new bit of information. Yet we can bring up from the 8th consciousness this memory of what we learned and then use it. This is due to this second aspect of the all-base consciousness, the all-base of complete ripening. That is when these imprints are reawakened, they come back up into the mind consciousness, and they are perceived freshly. That's how we learn things. It's also the same way with our mental afflictions. If our mind consciousness gets angry, it doesn't persist. It goes to the 8th consciousness and is stored there. And the more anger we put into it, the stronger the anger gets when it comes back. And it's the same thing with strong desire and also indifference, which are the main kleshas that we have, the main afflictive states of mind. So all of this is because the storage in the all-base consciousness has this cumulative effect. So the all-base consciousness is necessary for karma to ripen. And he goes back to the bank analogy, and he says, sometimes you have to pay interest at the bank. I got a kick out of this bill I got from my bank the other day. I had neglected to pay interest and I owed 7 cents. I would like to get more past due notices like that, by the way. But anyway, the point is that we put in this karma from our actions of body, speech, and mind, but sometimes there's a little bit of interest applied to it, and the results are more than what we put in, both in terms of good karma and bad karma. So small acts add up and can result in big results. And karma can ripen slowly or it can ripen quickly. Then he talks about 2 ways that karma can ripen. The first is the result in accordance with the cause. And the result is similar to the cause, but it's experienced later. So you get angry, and this will lead to more anger in the future. When you express kindness, it leads to more kindness in the future. This is due to the power of our karmic imprints. The second is the completely ripened result. I would sum this up by saying what goes around comes around. What you put out there comes back at you. If you put out anger, you get back anger from other people. If you put out kindness, other people are kind to you. First was when you put out anger, you just keep getting angry in the future. This one is when you put out anger, other people send it right back your direction. Then, with this completely ripened result, he has 4 different categories here of when it will come back at you. And the first is that if it's a very strong interaction, the result will be experienced in your present life. Whether it be good or bad karma, it will be experienced in your present life. The second is karmic actions will be experienced after your rebirth, after dying and then going on to your next life. And again, it doesn't matter if we're talking about good karma or bad karma. You won't experience the results until your next life. The third is karmic actions with the experience of the result after an uncertain number of rebirths. So it is uncertain when this karma will ripen. It could be many lifetimes in the future. Also, you can look at it this way too. What you are experiencing in your present life could easily be the result of actions that you have engaged in from many previous lifetimes before, not just your last lifetime. And then the fourth one is karmic actions. There's uncertainty about experiencing the results. The karma is weak, and you might not even experience the results. They may not ripen. Now, he talks about meditation. One of the benefits of meditation is that it leaves karmic imprints. With calm, abiding meditation, the 6th consciousness relaxes, and it becomes a little more clear, the 6th consciousness. It's only the coarse thoughts that are calming down. This is an important point to remember. This is why you still can have subtle thoughts even if you have practiced for decades meditating. He compares this to the ocean and waves, and this is a very standard and I suspect a very old analogy. The all-base consciousness is the ocean, and the mind consciousness are the waves on the ocean. When you're meditating, then the mind consciousness and its thoughts arrive from the all-base consciousness, the same way that waves arise from a calm ocean. The waves are part of the ocean. They return to the ocean. They are never separate from the ocean. So when we meditate, there is this type of an experience going on. You have the all-base consciousness, and then thoughts arise, which are like waves in the mind consciousness, and then they subside, go back into the all-base consciousness. And when it has returned to the all-base consciousness, that's where the gross thoughts, the coarse thoughts, have become calm. It doesn't mean that you're meditating like a rock or spaced out or blank, you have this awareness and clarity quality there. You might say, see, you understand. It's never interrupted, but the coarse thoughts, at least for a brief time, have subsided. And this allows the experience of primordial awareness. And this experience is a clear and radiant mind that's at rest. In our daily meditation, he talks about deity meditation here. It is the mind consciousness that creates the body of the deity. It is a mentally created body. When we do this visualization, the karmic imprints are stored in the all-base consciousness. Through repetition, more and more is stored there. It becomes more of a habit, and the visualization becomes clearer and more stable. And he said it's possible to one day meet the deity face to face. In some of the classic biographies of great practitioners in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about this very experience where the practitioner meets the deity that they have been practicing, and the deity gives them instructions. But this is all a result of a deity meditation with a front visualization, not a self-visualization. There probably is a self-visualization also involved, but it's the front visualization that allows this to happen. So next he talks about self-visualization. When we meditate on ourselves as being the deity, it can be difficult. We have a difficult time thinking of ourselves as a deity. We think it's a fantasy. But by doing so, we're accumulating the karmic imprints in the all-base consciousness. Stability gradually develops, and qualities like primordial awareness, compassion, and the qualities specific to that deity, they gradually have an opportunity to manifest. Now, they've always been there. Because of our obscurations, we've not been aware of them, and they have not surfaced. But these obscurations can be removed little by little through repeatedly practicing these visualizations and particular Vajrayana practices. Eventually, the qualities will reappear pure and clean from the all-base consciousness. And this is the result of the self-visualization. To sum this up, the eighth consciousness stores both positive and negative karmic traces. The karma from practice goes there. Even a little practice creates positive karma, and Buddhahood is the result of small acts of Dharma activity. So even little moments of practice are important. But if you're in a hurry, practice more frequently. The question is, would you expand a little bit about what you meant by dullness as a klesha? It has many different names. This is a way I like ignorance. You're ignoring things. You're not paying attention. Denial is another aspect of that. You're not really seeing the bigger picture. You're so focused on one particular, you might say, path, object, or whatever. You're missing the elephant in the room. There are a lot of different words for this, but it is just plain being so confused and ignorant. Maybe you go to work with two different colors socks on, because you didn't even pay attention when you were putting your socks on.